Hello, my name is Nicole Hansen, and today I will be discussing student slang and the impact it has on teachers. In any classroom, there are going to be students that use slang in their conversations. In a way, it is expected, and sometimes even appropriate that students use slang. Slang, for the purpose of this presentation, refers to the generational and cultural language of the students. My questions in terms of students' use of slang are: how does student slang impact teachers in the classroom setting? And how do students react when teachers use slang the students use? There are many factors that go into the way students view teachers who use slang. Some of these factors include gender, age, and if the slang is positive or negative. The research shows that for students to accept teachers that use student slang, there must be a strong relationship between the teacher and the students. Teachers must be aware of the cultural and community basis of the slang before using it to interact with students. By students using slang in their everyday vocabulary, it tends to slip into their teacher's vocabulary as well. What I have found is that student slang does impact teachers in the way that they speak. The majority of the time, teachers do not understand what the students are saying when they first use slang, so the students must explain what the terms mean. In the article, High School Students Write Handbook of Slang for Philadelphia Teachers by the Associated Press, high school students actually created a handbook for the new teachers to be able to understand their slang. The article said, "For the first time, the Philadelphia district has presented its new teachers and counselors with a handbook written by high school students. It features sections on engaging students, equality versus equity, and the all-important Philly slang component, a glossary, terms defined to ground school staff in the language their students actually use." End quote. The students were aware that their slang may confuse their new teachers, so they went out of their way to create a guide to help them understand the community basis of their slang. This booklet introduces teachers to more than just slang that students use. It informs the teachers of the cultural basis that surrounds the students. This not only tells teachers what the students talk like, what their community is like, and how they engage within their community. Of course, not all schools give teachers a guide on student slang, meaning that teachers must decode this teenage language by themselves, or by asking questions. Student slang is common in the classroom through overheard conversations, or even in student-to-teacher conversations. In the article, Internet Slang in High School Students, A Teacher's Perspective by Thomas Fish, he wanted to see if internet slang was affecting students' school assignments. After doing the study twice, both times the results of the study showed internet slang is in fact being used by students in the classroom and found in academic work. With students using generational slang in their academic work, it makes it more difficult for teachers to understand what the students are trying to say. This leads to teachers needing to adjust and adapt to what the new slang is that students are using in their academic work. As technology becomes more dominant in the school system, this is a very real issue that teachers are facing. The article said, "Online devices have now changed the face of social presence, and teens have developed their own language through the use of internet slang. This medium has changed the way teenagers act." End quote. As the students change, so must the teachers, meaning that teachers must now find a way to interpret what their students are saying. The conclusion to this study was, schools are purchasing devices which allow the ability to enable students to change the understanding of the English language, and the educators are learning to interpret the way students use internet slang. This study found that there is no way to avoid student slang. Student slang is going to affect the classroom and the teachers whether teachers want it to or not. The best thing an educator can do is to embrace it and try to interpret it the best way that they can. One way that a school district embraced student slang through technology was changing the computer's language code to involve slang rather than staying with the formal approach. In the article, Introducing the Familiarity Mechanism, a unified explanatory approach for the personalization effect of the examination of youth slang in multimedia learning, by Sasha Schneider, school districts wanted to see what students preferred when it came to how their instructors spoke within computer-based learning. The article wanted to say, consistent with previous empirical data, the present study tries to find out whether it is worth integrating a new form of personalization youth slang into multimedia instructional design. Student slang is influencing much more than just the teachers in the classroom. It has now begun to influence the way computer learning is implemented as well. In the beginning of the investigation of the personalized principle, Schneider claimed that when learning with an on-screen agent, the use of a conversational style can foster better learning performance and compared to formal speaking style. Much like in the classroom, students prefer being spoken to in a casual way to avoid feeling like they are being spoken down to. This study found that students thrive better academically when they are spoken to in a non-formal manner using slang. Whether students are in the classroom or on the computer, their slang influences the way they are spoken to. A problem that can occur when teachers use student slang in the classroom is that the teacher never knows how students may react to it. Richard Hain, in his article, Fired Up About Education, wanted to see what the positive and negative effects were of teachers using slang to talk to students. Hain first notes that, for the purpose of the study, positive slang refers to informational language that a speaker may utilize to signal identification with the listener. Positive slang in this article is relatively slang that students would use. Hain wanted to test how this type of language from a teacher would impact students. The results were that, in terms of student motivation and active learning, students appear to perceive positive slang and slang-free speech similarly. However, positive slang appears to uniquely impact classroom climate more than if a teacher were not to use slang at all. Teachers who use student slang affect the classroom climate whether they mean to or not. That is why it is very important as a teacher to understand the cultural and community background behind the slang. Teachers who choose to speak in this matter need to be fully aware of what they are saying. A caution that Hain says is, despite the potential benefits of positive slang, instructors should use it cautiously, realizing that, as with any teaching tool, a certain style is not evaluated positively by all students. In the real classroom setting, students' perceptions are likely to change over the term as they become more acquainted with the teacher. End quote. Teachers are going to use student slang need to know their students. If used the right way, the slang can make the classroom a better environment. If used in an unintentional offensive way, the use of slang can destroy the positive classroom environment. In the end, Hain says, ultimately the teacher who uses positive slang can resolve this issue. In an effort to use positive slang effectively in the classroom, teachers should delegate differences between slang and professional speech and address when each would or would not be appropriate. End quote. If a teacher is going to use slang in their classroom, it needs to be made apparent to the students that it is not a professional way to speak. This is a way of approaching the slang to be a specific time and place type of language. As Richard Hain in the article previously mentioned focused on how teachers that use slang affected student motivation, teachers who use slang affect students in more ways than just their motivation. Carl Brown wanted to see how students evaluate teachers that use slang. In his article, Instructor-Student Classroom Interactions, the focus is on how students perceive teachers that use slang while talking to students. Brown's first point is that if a teacher is going to use slang, they have to know their audience. He says, higher education instructors must establish meaningful relationships with students in order to be effective. Student ratings of instructor dynamics, approachability, and credibility impact overall evaluations of instructors. End quote. Like mentioned before, a teacher must really know their students' background before using slang. If a teacher uses student slang in an unknowingly inappropriate manner, it can negatively affect the way a student views their teacher. He found that students perceive male teachers who use slang in a more positive way than female teachers who use slang. Ultimately, though, the main point that Brown makes is that for students to respond positively to teachers who use slang, the teachers need to have a strong understanding of the cultural basis behind the slang. Whether a teacher is male or female, they need to have a strong relationship with their students before speaking casually with them in that manner. In conclusion, students using slang in the classroom is an inevitable part of teaching. The way that students speak affects the teacher in numerous ways. Teachers must adapt to the way their students communicate, whether it is in the way they speak or in the way that they grade the students. Teachers who use student slang in their classroom need to be aware of the cultural and community basis that the slang is centered around. Students do not respond positively to teachers who use slang when they do not understand the meaning behind it. Teachers who do not understand the cultural basis of slang can unintentionally offend the students and damage the classroom climate. That is why it is important for teachers to have a strong relationship with the students before using their slang in conversation. In the end, student slang does affect teachers. As educators, if they are going to incorporate it in their classroom, it needs to be in an appropriate way that they and the students are comfortable with. And here are my citations. Thank you for listening.